Okay, thank you for the organizers. Thank you for inviting. We want to learn something extremely, it's a learning class today. Until when do we have? How long do we have? 45 minutes, okay. 45 minutes. The connection that we want to make to Hanukkah is a little bit vague, but it could be that it's very much nogea. The reason is that in Hanukkah, as you all know, Jewish people were very confused. Largely of the nation were confused, not everybody, but they were confused of whether they should follow those that were called Mityavnim, Greeks, because they came with new ideology of how to do things and how to, what's the right belief, and so on and so forth. And many people went after them, and they fell into that new ideology, and we want to learn about that as well today. That's nogea in many different topics. For example, of whether, I don't know if people are familiar, but there are in Israel people that that claim to be prophets, Navi, and they get a lot of they get a lot of stage on many websites, many news websites, and people listen to them, and it needs to be addressed. And they come out in front of the video, in front of the video that they're taping. They raise their hand like this, like they get a nevuah, and so on. Whoever knows. Is such a thing permitted to listen to such a person? Could it be true what he's saying? Is he really a prophet? Or maybe he's a Navi Sheker? Another thing that's very common is that today in media age, everybody can say whatever they want, and therefore there's many rabbis that, not many, there are rabbis that claim that other rabbis are Apikoresim. And they have a list: this rabbi is Apikores, this rabbi is Apikores, a Kofer, Heretic, and all kind of things. What are the criteria of a Kofer? Can a person, what puts a person under that category of Kofer? And most importantly, besides many other things, Apikores, Kofer, many things that we need to learn, I want to learn also about who should we listen to. In other words, you see big signs once in a while in shuls, Tsadik Balair, a righteous person is coming to town. Who should we be excited from? A tzaddik? What is a tzaddik? Or rather, a rabbi? What is a rabbi? Who's considered Gdol Ador? Who should we follow? Who should we be excited from? Who's the person that's coming to town and we should really admire? So all those things are very clear in Halakha and in the Poskim. We just have to open up the Poskim and see what they say. Nothing that I will say over here is not sourced. It's just very, very simple things, and it needs to be spoken and need to be addressed. So let's start, for example, we started with a Navi. Let's see what the Torah says about a Navi. So there are psukim in the Torah, beferush, that say that whenever a Navi comes and claims to be a Navi, how do I know if he's a Navi Emet or Navi Sheker? V'chi tomar bilvavecha, says the Torah. Echa neda et hadavar asher lo dibru Hashem. How would we know who's a Navi Sheker? אשר ידבר הנביא בשם השם ולא יהיה הדבר ולא יבוא, הוא הדבר שלא דיברו השם. בזדון דיברו הנביא לא תגור ממנו, which means like this. The Torah commands us to listen to a Navi Emet. If he's a truthful Navi, we must listen to him. It's not something that it's optional. We must follow what he says. But if it's a Navi Sheker, we must not listen to him. Not only that, the Torah says that he's chayav mitah. But how would I know who's Navi Sheker and who's Navi Emet? He says a prophecy. He said he received it from God. there was a Navi Sheker, Tzidkiah ben Knaana. ויקח צדקיה בן כנענה קרניים ויאמר כה אמר השם באלה תנגח את ארם. He לקח קרני ברזל. He took horns and he said with those Israel would gore Aram. He was a Navi Sheker when Yirmiyahu was screaming that Am Israel would soon go through a disaster. So Tzidkiah ben Knaana came up and said, I'm a prophet and I received the prophecy and this is my prophecy and so on and so forth. So how would we know? Says the Torah, if his words don't come true. If his words don't come true, you know he's a Navi Sheker. That's what it is. The Mefarshim explain, you see this in the Rambam and many Mefarshim, that it depends. If he had a bad prophecy, something bad that's going to happen, the purpose for a nevuah, that's hard nevuah, there's something that comes out to be something that would be harmful to Am Yisrael, a disaster for Am Yisrael, that could be changed. Because if Am Yisrael makes the teshuvah, that is the purpose of a Navi. A Navi comes out to say a nevuah, to give a prophecy in order that Am Yisrael should change their ways. So if there's something bad that they're saying, and Am Yisrael made teshuvah, it could change. So that if that prophecy doesn't come true, it's not a proof that the prophecy is not, the prophet is not a emet prophet, is not a truthful prophet. But the opposite, if a Navi says a good thing will happen, that must happen. That can't change. Okay? So you need to, whenever you have such a prophet that comes out every Monday and Thursday, picks up his hands and says, I see a nevuah, that this is going to happen, it's very easy to track his record and see, 1 minute. What did you say 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a year ago, 2 years ago? Did it happen? It needs to happen to the teeth. It needs to be to the very small details. Did it happen? It did not happen. If it didn't, you're a Navi Sheker. The Rambam says, no more than that. Those Nevi'im, by the way, those that claim to be Nevi'im and do that, the reason I speak about it is because, again, they have followers. And not only they have followers, they give them stage on very big websites, news websites, very big ones. So I need to speak about the opposite to make clarity. The Rambam says that in order for a prophet to be a prophet is the following. This Rambam Yesodei Torah Perek Zayin, En nevuah chala ela al chacham gadol bechokma. He must be very, very big Talmid chacham, gadol bechokma, gibor bemidotav. He needs to have midot tovot. He needs to be מתגבר על יצרו, לא יהיה יצרו מתגבר עליו בדבר בעולם, אלא הוא מתגבר בדעתו על יצרו תמיד. He always able to conquer his Yetzer Hara. Such a person with good midot tovot, with ability to conquer the Yetzer Hara, all types of Yetzer Hara, בעל דעה רחבה, נכונה עד מאוד, and so on and so forth. These people also don't seem to fit those criteria as well. More than that, it says, כולם הם רואים הנבואה האלה בחלום הלילה, בחלום בחזיון הלילה, says the Rambam. When do you see a prophecy? At night when you're asleep, not when you pick up your hands and you now receiving it. Ooh, now I'm receiving a nevuah. That doesn't happen. Like the only person in history that received the nevuah while he was awake was Moshe Rabbeinu. But others, it's always כולם הם רואים הנבואה, אלא בחלום בחזיון הלילה, או ביום אחר שתיפול עליהן תרדמה, either at night or during the day when they fall asleep. They start collapsing, they start getting like a stroke, and they start, they lose, so to speak, like they faint and they get a nevuah. But not while they're awake and things are happening at the spot. כולם שמתנבאים, אבריהן מזדעזעים, their body starts shaking, כוח הגוף כושל, their body weakens, they don't have any strength, and that's when they get a nevuah. Says the Gemara, משמתו הנביאים האחרונים, חגי, זכריה ומלאכי, נסתלקה רוח הקודש, which means there is an end to the nevuah. There's not going to be nevuah after חגי, זכריה ומלאכי, until time will come, but not randomly on any time, okay? More than that, the Gemara says in Baba Batra that Navi, nevuah, today was given to who? to the shotim vektanim. If you hear anybody that could say a prophecy, it got to be a shoteh, somebody who doesn't have a mind. That's called a shoteh. Or a minor, a kid. You see a little kid, a toddler that just started talking and he's saying, oh, something. That could, if he says something, he could get a nevuah. If anything, those could get a nevuah, says the Gemara. Nobody else. Okay? So that is something that we need to put clearly and explain. Another thing, we said about an Avi Sheker, so I found a Minchat Chinuch, very interesting, that although we just said that those people are Nevi'ei Sheker, they're Nevi'ei Sheker, but Minchat Chinuch says more than that. He says something very interesting. He says that a Navi Sheker needs to have a certain importance, but not every fool that would come around and start saying Nevuot, you'll treat him as a Navi Sheker. He's going to be chayav mita. We don't. It's just a shoteh. He's a fool. Says the Minchat Chinuch. I'm quoting. Lo shayach navi sheker rak im olech bederech navi שראוי להאמין בו. If he's such a person that you should believe in him. על נבואת אמת. אם הוא משקר, הרי זה נביא שקר. אבל אם בא איזה אידיוט, a regular nobody comes around, הוא מתנבא, הרי זה לשחוק וללעג, ומי יאמין לו ואינו בכלל זה. Somebody who's a nobody, he's not a Talmid Chacham, he doesn't have, just today you just go in front of a camera and you record yourself and say nevuot. Could be that it's just not even under the category of, he didn't even make it to the category of Navi Sheker, okay? So that's something that we need to put out. Another thing that I wanted to speak to you was about what we said as Apikores. So I don't know if you're familiar, but today there's again list of rabbis and list of people that are considered to be Apikoresim, Kofrim, and it's very popular today to categorize people as Kofrim. But it's not, Kofrim have very, very specific titles, and they need to fit exactly the conditions that the halacha says. And let's just read a Chafetz Chaim in Lashon Hara, Perek Chet. Halacha Hey says that you're allowed to speak when it says that you aren't allowed to talk Lashon Hara about anybody. He excludes Kofrim. Kofer, somebody who's Apikores, you're allowed to speak about him Lashon Hara. You're allowed to say, oh, be careful, he's Apikores, he's no good, he's an NG, be careful, stay away from him. It's true. But the Chafetz Chaim tells us also who's under the definition of an Apikores. Who falls under the definition of Apikores? Says the Chafetz Chaim, Apikores nikra hakofer b'Torah u'v'nevuah miYisrael, which means a person that says that the Torah is not emet. We never received the Torah, or we received a different Torah, or Moshe Rabbeinu was not a true prophet, chas v'shalom, or the other Nevi'im were not true Nevi'im, chas v'shalom. Those are considered Apikoresim. Who else? Who's under that category as well? Ben בתורה שבכתב and תורה שבעל פה, if a person is kofer in the תורה שבעל פה, which means he says, no, the Gemara was only written by some rabbis that just wrote things that randomly by themselves, it's not true, doesn't mean anything. Person that's speaking negatively about the Torah שבכתב או תורה שבעל פה falls under the category of an Apikores. אפילו הוא אומר כל התורה מן השמיים חוץ מפסוק אחד או קל וחומר אחד או גזרה שווה אחת או דקדוק אחד גם הוא בכלל זה, which means a person needs to deny and say that something that's written in the Torah or something the Chachamim said is not true. They were wrong. They say something that is fault, or they never said it, or things that would make him under the category of denying something, okay? But not anybody else. Says the Rambam. Where did the Chafetz Chaim get this from? Says the Rambam in Hilchot Shuvah. שלושה הם הנקראים אפיקורסים. 3 are considered under the category of אפיקורסים. אומר שאין שם נבואה כלל. If a person says that we did not receive any prophecies, not Moshe Rabbeinu and not others, אין שם מדע שמגיע מהבורא ללב בני אדם. המכחיש נבואתו של משה רבנו, all the same. האומר שאין הבורא יודע מעשה בני אדם. If a person says he's another אפיקורס, a person that says Hashem doesn't know what's going on in the world. Hashem is detached from the world. He doesn't know what's going on in the world. He doesn't pay attention to the world. He doesn't pay attention to the people. That's את אפיקורס. שלושה הם הכופרים בתורה. Who's a כופר in the Torah? We spoke about אפיקורס. Let's speak about כופר. Who's כופר? אומר שאין התורה מעם השם. Person that says that Hashem didn't give us the Torah. אפילו פסוק אחד, that's what the חפץ חיים mentioned. He brought it from here. כן הכופר בפירושה, והאומר שהבורא החליף מצווה זו במצווה אחרת. If a person says, like the Christians do, that הקדוש ברוך הוא changed the Torah. He changed the laws. Now you don't need to keep anymore the mitzvot. Hashem changed the laws. So those are the apikosim, those are the kofrim. Anybody else that says something else, not necessarily that it falls or it doesn't fall under the category of kofer or apikores. More than that, says Rav Yosef Albo. Rav Yosef Albo is a kadmon, very, very, and he has a sefer called Sefer Haikarim. It's 2 volumes. Sefer Haikarim. He goes to explain who's considered a kofer and who's considered not a kofer. So you know that there's Yud Gimel Ikarim. There's 13 principles that the Rambam says that you have to believe in. If you don't believe them, you're a kofer. Okay? So under those categories are all different things, whether a person says that there's no sachar ve'onesh, a person that doesn't believe in Mashiach, in Tchiyat HaMetim, and so on and so forth. There's 13 principles. Says Rav Yosef Albo, if a person just made a mistake while learning, he's learning something a little bit different than the way it should be, he made a mistake. Even though it's a very severe mistake, and he brings examples over there, which I don't want to say over here, but a person could take a look at his sefer. It's right away in the beginning of his sefer, right away in the Perek Aleph. So he speaks about how a person could make a mistake of understanding, and even if he's wrong and he made a mistake in God, understanding God differently than the way it is, or understanding Hashem's desires in the world, or needs in the world, or Hashem connections to the world, or whatever it is, if a person made such a mistake, even if he's wrong, I'm not saying he's wrong or he's not wrong, but even if somebody says something that is off, did he violate one of those things that we mentioned right now? The answer is no. He didn't say any of these that we mentioned. He didn't say En Sham Nevuah Klal. He didn't say that he wasn't Makhish Nevuato Shel Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't say that Aboreh doesn't know, the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the Creator, doesn't know what's going on in the world. Since a person doesn't say any of those, is not considered a kofer. You can't just consider him and label him as a kofer and start speaking against him or going against him or putting him under the blacklist and constantly smearing his name. Okay, so that's a very, very important things that we need to learn. Now, let's speak about who's greater, a chacham, which means a talmid chacham, or somebody who's righteous. In one hand, it looks like righteous people. Those are the people that we should go to get a blessing from. What's considered a righteous, first of all? You have people that are all day, they don't talk, they're all day with tefillin on their head, they're all day praying, learning a little bit, but most of the day praying, and most of the day fasting, whatever it is, great things. I'm not saying anything negative about such a thing. It's great. They're connecting with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's unbelievable. It's beautiful. But who's greater? Such a person that's elevated, Tsadik Bala'ir. He's all day osek in tshuva and in masim tovim and in fasting and not talking anything that's besides tefillah and so on and so forth. There are people like that. It's a beautiful thing. They pray early in the morning. They hardly sleep at night, and people go for them for brachot. It's a great thing. Or is that what we should be excited from? Is this who we should follow and look up to? Or should it be a talmid chacham that sits in a yeshiva in the corner? Nobody looks at him. When he goes to shul, he doesn't even get the aliyah, because nobody pays attention to him. He wears clothing that are already a little bit old, and his shoes are already 2 years old. And again, nobody pays attention to him. He gets a check from Kollel for years and years. He hardly makes he hardly makes it. Who's greater? But he's a Talmid Chacham. Talmid Chacham, he sits, let's take for an example, a Lakewood, somebody who sits in Lakewood for 30 years, 40 years in yeshiva, in the kollel, sits down and learns Talmid Chacham, he knows Shas, he knows Poskim, he knows how to, if you ask him a question, he'll know how to answer. But he's not a tzaddik. He eats good, he drinks good, right? Usually with a nice stomach. On Shabbat he eats good, and on Seudah Shlishit he eats good. Not like the other tzaddik we're talking about, who's very skinny, hardly eats. Who's greater? Let's see. So this is something that you find in Chazon Ish, Emunah Bitachon. He speaks about this. And it's worth learning this in order to realize who we need to be excited from. Says the Chazon Ish, he brings many examples to show that a Talmid Chacham are those that are the people that we need to look up to. Those are the great people that we are to follow. Says the Gemara, I'll bring out what he says, a little bit more than that, but what he says. Here's a Gemara in Bava Kama Daf Mem. The Gemara says, Meshabeach leRava Nachman berav Abba, bar Yaakov leAdam gadolu. Rava was saying to Rav Nachman, there's a great person in the world, you should know, a tremendous person, somebody who's great. His name is Rav Acha bar Yaakov. Rav Acha bar Yaakov. So Rava said this to Rav Nachman. So he told him, if he ever comes around, if he ever comes to town, I want to talk to him. Let him, bring him in front of me. Amar le כשיבוא לידך אביהו לידי. Bring him towards me. I want to speak to him. I want to meet him. I want to speak to him in Torah. See if I can really understand myself his greatness. כי עתה לגבי, when he came, אמר לבאין מנין מילתי. He told him, ask for me something. And he asked him a question. He asked this big Talmid Chacham, Rav Acha bar Yaakov, a question in Nezikin, shor shel shnei shutfin, ketzad meshalmim kofer, which means when an ox gores a person and kills him, he needs to pay what we call a kofer, a certain amount. So that amount needs to be paid by the owner of the shor. What if he has two partners? Does each pay half of the amount, or each one needs to pay the entire amount? Because when they pay that amount, they are really redeeming themselves. That is what kofer, redeeming. You kill the person, it's like you need to redeem yourself for what the terrible things that you did. So now, redeeming yourself means that you have to pay the entire kofer? Or since it's two people that are partners of the ox, they'll share the expense. He gave him an answer. And that is what made him very excited, which means what categorizes a person as a great person? He told him, Mishabech de Adam Gadolu, he's a great person. What made him into a big, great person? The fact that he was what? He was able to understand and answer Torah questions. Okay, that's beautiful, right? Any questions up to here? We said a lot of things. Or we should keep questions for afterwards. Or no questions? Okay.
So when they're saying someone who's fasting, all that, it means like they can be considered a rabbi, or called rabbi something, but they're just not learning all day. They're going and they're doing other things.
No, he's learning all day. We're talking about a person that's learning all day. Also in Yeshiva, also in Lakewood. And not only in Lakewood, in the same bench like the other person. And he's learning the same amount of hours. And he's doing exactly what the other person. But the other person was more successful in the learning. It's not fair. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave more blessing, more beracha, to that person that was able to learn much better, understand Torah much better, was learning much more. The Tsadik, on the other hand, is a very big Tsadik. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave him the uplifting to become a big tzaddik, a connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Sometimes you see people, you say, it's not fair. Why does he has... I have that feeling sometimes. I see these people that are very connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like they're davening, they're really like speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, like they feeling HaKadosh Baruch Hu right there, and they're talking to him like a person speaks to his friend. And they feel very elevated, and they inspired in the tefillah. So you say, even if I want to do that, I can do that. And sometimes they didn't even work to get there. But even if they did, who's greater? That person that really connected with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and his tefillot are unbelievable, they're fiery. Or the same person in the same bench that's learning the same hours, but he's much greater in learning. So Rava and Rav Nachman explained to us that a great person, this is brought down in this Sefer Chazon Ish, that a great person is not necessarily the Tsadik, but rather the person that knows more Torah. Okay? Let's see another example. In Orayot, it says the following: Pashat lehuna bre de Rav Nachman le Rav Papa, din Kohen Gadol shenitztareh ma'u be'almana. There was a question. Rav Huna bre de Rav Nachman explained to Rav Papa a question that he had. What should be the din of Kohen Gadol? Kohen Gadol, you know, is not allowed to marry a almana, a widow. Kohen Gadol is not allowed to marry a widow. But what happens if the Kohen Gadol becomes a Metzorah? He has leprosy. So now he can't serve as a Kohen Gadol. But is he allowed now to marry that widow? No. So there was a question. Rav Papa answered the question. Rav Huna, when he heard that, when he heard the answer from Rav Papa, Kam nashke al rosho veyav le brate. He came up, he stood up, he kissed him on his head, and he gave him to marry his daughter. Now, says the Chazon Ish, what excited Rav Papa? Was it the great prayers that he did? Was it the great chesed that he did? Was it maybe miracles that he did? There's rabbis that do miracles. There's Ba'alei Moftim. Was it miracles that got him excited? No. What got him excited? That he gave him his daughter. He answered him a question in halakha. He showed him that he's a real Talmid Chacham. That's what got him excited. Let's see another example. In Menachot it says like this: Yosef HaBavli למד מרבו דין השוחט את הזבח להניח מדמו למחר. He learned a certain halakha. Yosef HaBavli learned from his rabbi a certain halakha. צהבו פניו של יוסף HaBavli. His face got all shined up when he learned that halakha. עכשיו ששנית לי פסול, החזרת לי אבידתי. He told him, now that you taught me that halakha, it's like you gave me back a lost item that was lost for me for a long time. He got excited from what? You understand? What are we excited from? We're excited from good sushi. From getting a pizza with, that's very crunchy and very good, and it comes with a good drink. He told him a halakha, like, by us we hear a halakha, if we don't fall asleep, so we like it, or we understand it. צהבו פניו, his face shined up, זלגו עיניו של רבי אלעזר בן שמוע דמעות, he started crying, רבי אלעזר בן שמוע. אמר, אשריכם תלמידי חכמים שדברי תורה חביבים עליכם ביותר. You know how they sing this song? That אשריכם תלמידי חכמים שדברי תורה חביבים. So this comes from this Gemara in Menachot Yudchet. That he started crying when he heard about this halakha. And therefore, the Gemara says in Kiddushin that a person that wants to get married, and he says to the girl says, listen, I need a Talmid Chacham. I'm not marrying anybody. The girl tells the Chatan, I need you to be a Talmid Chacham. So he marries her on condition that he's a Talmid Chacham. So the Gemara says he doesn't need to be to the level of Shimon ben Azai. Or if he says al menat shani talmid or al menat shani chacham, he doesn't need to say kechachmei Avne, Rabbi Akiva vechachamav vechaverav, which means a person, what's the top that we need to look up to? Those are the people we need to look up to. Those are what the Gemara brings out as the models that we need to try to learn and try to achieve to be like. And another Gemara about Ben Azai. Ben Azai was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, Shimon Ben Azai. When the Chachamim wanted to be impressed, a rabbi would say, Areni keben Azai. So for instance, it would say, Areni keben Azai b'shuket Tveria. What does that mean? All the rabbis would gather when somebody would say that. All the rabbis of town, and we're talking about tremendous Talmidei Chachamim, we're talking about the Gemara time, Bavel. So he would say, Areni keben Azai b'shuket Tveria. That's not Bavel, that's Eretz Israel. But he would say, like Ben Azai in Shuket Tveria, everybody would gather. The whole rabbis would gather when this rabbi would say that. And what they would do? They would ask him halachot, as the Gemara, halachot eruv, all kind of very hard questions. Because Ben Azai was like, like today you would say, if you would say, I'm like Rav Chaim Kanievsky, I'm like Chacham Ovadia, which means, what does it mean? It means that I'm very righteous, come ask for me any beracha that you want? No, beracha. It's nice to get bracha, but that's not what excites Talmidei Chachamim. That's not what excites HaKadosh Baruch Hu that much. What excites HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Halachot eruv. That's what they all gather to ask them. And therefore, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed Moshe Rabbeinu, Rabbi Akiva, Moshe Rabbeinu, when he came to Shamayim to receive the Torah in Har Sinai, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him that there's going to be a tremendous Talmid Chacham in the future. Who is that? Rabbi Akiva. What did he show him, Rabbi Akiva, doing? He says, Amar, Kadosh Baruch Hu says, Atid Adam Echad lidrosh al kol kotz vekotz tile tilin shel halachot, which means Rabbi Akiva was the big person that Moshe Rabbeinu was excited to see. He told Kadosh Baruch Hu, what are you giving Torah to me? Give it to him. He's greater than me, says Moshe Rabbeinu. What did he do, Rabbi Akiva? Was he fasting a lot? Was he praying a lot? He was doing all that, yes, but that's not what excited Moshe Rabbeinu, and that's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu said. That's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu emphasized as something that is very great. What is emphasized? That he was able to darshan every kotz in a letter. Letters have kotzim. For instance, a yud, it has a kotz on top. So that kotz, he was able to be doresh tilet tilin shel halachot. He was able to learn from this halachot. Now, there's a lot of things more to mention, but I want to mention a couple of more things that are very, very important, that summarizes the greatness of a Talmid Chacham, and that is Gemara in Baba Kama Mem Aleph. You probably know that Gemara. The Gemara speaks about Shimon HaAmsoni. Haya doresh et kol etin shebatorah. Whenever it says et in the Torah, he would be doresh. What does it mean? Akaved et avicha ve'et imecha. What does the et comes to add? What does it come to teach me? So it means achicha gadol. You also have to respect your brother, your great brother, and so on and so forth. Not only your father and mother, but there's an et over here. Et comes to teach you that you have to respect your ach gadol. But then he got stuck. Where did he get stuck? He said, it says that et Hashem Elokecha tira. You have to respect Hashem. And over here he said, 1 minute, I'm stuck. Because who else would you be? What can you be doresh from the et? Who else can you bring out with the word et that would be as great as HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Because when you want to learn et Hashem Elokecha tira, you want to say that you have to fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you have to fear somebody else, because et comes to be merabeh, comes to add somebody else as well. Who else would you be adding from that? So he said, since there's nobody else that would be on that level, forget about my old derashot about et. I regret everything, I take back everything. Until Rabbi Akiva came and said, no. There's somebody that you have to fear as much as you fear HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The same level, same level. Who are those? You already guessed it. Talmidei Chachamim. Very good. But you're not wrong. That is also true. In kavod, you have to ishva Kadosh Baruch Hu kvodam lekvod hamakom, which ishva pasuk kvodam lekvod hamakom, which means you write on respect. Respecting your parents should be the same. But when we're dealing about fear, who else should you fear? You should fear the same as you fear a Kadosh Baruch Hu. There's tremendous fear that one needs to have from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Same level would be for a Talmidei Chachamim. Yes. Yes. Right. That is much after. Right. Absolutely. Yes. So therefore it says in the halacha, in Yoreh De'ah, Siman Resh Mem Gibel, it says, Avon Gadol Levazot Talmidei Chachamim Ulesnotam. A tremendous sin to be mevazeh, to belittle Talmidei Chachamim, or lisnotan, or even just to hate them. I hate this rabbi. Even if you don't say anything, because you don't want to say something bad about rabbis, but that's the way you feel, like, I can't stand him. No, I didn't say that. It needs to be, so we're going to get to that. 1 second. A good question. We're going to get to that in a minute. וכל המבזה את החכמים, person that is מבזה, such a תלמיד חכם, אין לו חלק לעולם הבא, והוא בכלל דבר השם ביזה. And therefore, for example, אסור לשמש במי ששונה הלכות. Even if he's not a תלמיד חכם, you're not allowed to take advantage or ask to do for you something if somebody's learning halachot, even more so if he's learning Gemara. So if you see a yeshiva boy, we tend to anyway they're not doing anything. Come help me out. That's not simple, because asur leshamesh. They are considered kli kodesh. They are holy. Just like you wouldn't take a sefer Torah, you don't have a place to put your cup, and it happens to be there's a sefer Torah, you put it on top. Why not? That's the place. Because you can. It's beautiful. Even more so. They're doing more than they should. Amazing. But let's see about what you said. Who's a Talmid Chacham? Who's a Talmid Chacham? Those are beautiful questions. So who's a Talmid Chacham? Says the Rama in Resh Mem Gimel. There's a whole seif over there of who's a Talmid Chacham. And in that seif, the Rama in seif Bet, the Rama says, the Shulchan Aruch says, and the Rama says, אין חילוק בין שהוא תופס ישיבה או לא. It doesn't make a difference if he's a Rosh Yeshiva or not. That's not what makes a Talmid Chacham a Talmid Chacham. In other words, not necessarily a Rosh Yeshiva is a Talmid Chacham. Could be just, like today, many yeshivot just inherit the job from the father. So the father was a great Talmid Chacham. He opened up a yeshiva. He was amazing. And his son inherited the yeshiva, not necessarily as a Talmid Chacham. That's not the chiluk. Rather, רק שהוא מוחזק לתלמיד חכם בתורה. People hold of him, and soon we'll see what it means, people hold of him as a Talmid Chacham in his generation. What does it mean in his generation? Of course, in this generation, you put somebody as a Talmid Chacham in this generation, you put him 3 generations ago, people would not hold him as a Talmid Chacham because it's Yeridat Adorot. Every generation becomes much, much lower. But in that generation, and another condition, שיודע לישא וליתן בתורה. He knows how to learn Torah very well, question and answers. הוא מבין בדעתו ברוב מקומות התלמוד, which means he knows how to open up most of the places in the Gemara and learns and understands. And also פירושיו, פסקי הגאונים, ותורתו אומנותו, which means he learns Torah. That's what he does. He's not like, he's not like קובע עיתים as we call today, like 2 hours at night. It's great. Kovei Itim is great. Sometimes it's more than yeshiva boys do, unfortunately. So 2 hours he learns it, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours at night. He does the daf. It's amazing. But that's not Torato Umanuto. Torato Umanuto means he all day learns, not the entire day, most of the day. Torato Umanuto, the way they explain over here is that he does a little bit for his parnasah, which means, let's say, he does for an hour a day, just whatever he needs in order to bring parnasah home. But most of the day, he learns. So now, let's just summarize this. The Tashbet says that he's a Gia Lora v'Torato Omanuto. That's what it is. Or Letzion explains that not necessarily that he needs to know every halacha, rather he needs to know how to look up the halacha. So if you ask him, halacha in Ilchot Shabbat, for instance, what should be this halacha in Muktzeh, he says, you know what, let me look it up. He looks it up. He can find the halacha. He knows how to handle it. He knows how to get there. He knows how to bring out the halacha. That's considered a Talmid Chacham. Again, what's the definition of a Talmid Chacham? Says the Rama, Yodea lisa v'liten b'Torah. He knows how to learn Torah. He knows how to open up a Gemara and learns the Gemara. He knows how to learn Tosfot. He knows how to learn Rishonim, Achronim. Yeah, mevin meda'ato berov mekomot Talmud, which means he knows how to bring out from most of the places, rov mekomot Talmud, bring out the pshat and the perushim. He understands the perushim of Piskei HaGeonim, and so on and so forth. And the Or Letzion explains again that not necessarily that if you ask him a question, he needs to have it on his fingertips. That's beautiful, because the Gemara says that a person should say, Yomar lachokma achotiyat. A person should say to the wisdom, you are my sister. What does it mean? The Mefarshim explain, just like a person knows that his sister is forbidden to him, that's like simple. Everybody knows that I can't marry my sister. A person should know halachot and Torah just like that. לעולם יהיה תורה מחודדת, יהיו דברי תורה מחודדים בפיך. A person needs to have Torah sharpened in his mouth. שאם ישאלך אדם דבר, אל תגמגם ותאמר לו. A person needs to be able to answer right away, needs to know right away. The Gemara says that לעולם יהיה אדם רגיל לומר אין יודע, ילמד לשונו לומר אין יודע. On the other hand, the Gemara says a person should know I don't know. Should say I don't know. You ask him a question, should be easy for him to say I don't know. Say I don't know. Says Tosfot that what it means is that bedivrei chulin. In other words, if you ask him what's the weather tomorrow, I don't know. It's not divrei Torah. Oh, who won the basketball game? I don't know. What's happening in politics? I don't know. That's what it means. Lo adam shema titbadeh. You say something, maybe you're wrong, but when it comes to divrei Torah, you need to be able to know everything. But that's already a higher level. But a person that even he doesn't know everything, but he knows how to look it up, is considered already a Talmid Chacham. So let me finish. We have another few minutes and speak a little bit about Tsadik. So it's the excitement of the Chazon Ish in his Sefer Emunah U'Bitachon is from a Talmid Chacham, not from a Tzadik. Concept of a Tzadik, by the way, you should know that there's a difference between Hasidim and what were called back then Mitnagdim, or the Litaim, or the Yeshivot, and the Hasidim, because the concept of a Tzadik is a very, very big concept in Hasidut. Very big in Breslev, very big in Baal Shem Tov. They also understand Tzadik role very different than the Mitnagdim. But we're not going to go into that. I just throw it in so you'll know that there is such a thing. But according to the Mitnagdim, according to the Yeshivot, according to the Litaim, according to the Vilna Gaon, a role of such a person, a rabbi, is to teach you Torah and somebody you should learn from, learn his ways, learn what to do, look at him and look up to him. According to the Hasidim, the Baal Shem Tov and those that came afterwards, a tzaddik is somebody you want to be close to, because when you're close to him, you're connected closer to God. So it's a totally different understanding, but we're not going into that right now. But I want to show you a Gemara that looks like a contradiction for everything that we learned up to now. It's Gemara in Brachot Lamed Dalet. The Gemara over there says about Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel, his son became sick. So he sent two Talmidei Chachamim to Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa. Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was a great tzaddik. And he asked to Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa to pray for him. Levakesh alav rachamim. As soon as he saw them, he prayed, and he told them, don't worry. Right now, he just healed. He just became healthy. He told him, how do you know? He said, when I pray, and my prayer goes, it flows fluently, it means that HaKadosh Baruch Hu answered me, and so he was a great tzaddik. Says the Gemara, over there, same place, that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa went to learn Torah by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So who was greater? If Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa went to learn Torah from Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, which means that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the Rebbe. So he was greater. He was definitely greater in Torah, at least in Torah, right? So, and at the time, his son got sick. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's son became ill, apparently very ill. Not like not like he had the flu, and you give him Tamiflu, it'll be good in a couple of days. Amar lo, he came to him, he told him, Chanina bni. Look at the way he talks to him. Chanina bni, my son. My son means he treats him as a student, as a son, not as somebody who's higher than him, because he wasn't higher than him. He was his student. Bakesh alav hachamim, please pray for him. Veichia, and he should live, which means he was dying. And Yachosho ben Birkav, he put his head between his Birkaim, knees. Bikesh alav hachamim v'chaya. As soon as he started praying, right away, he healed and he lived. Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai told his wife, Ilmale tiach ben Zakkai et rosho ben birkav kol hayom kulo. If I would do that, if I would put my head between my shoulder and pray, even the whole day, lo hayu mashgichim alai. Nobody would pay attention to me in Shamayim. I would be completely ignored. Nothing would happen. Amra li ishto v'chichanina gadol mimcha. What are you talking about? Are you trying to say, are you implying that Chanina ben Dosa is greater than you? He said, no, you got it wrong. Amar lelav. אלא הוא דומה כעבד לפני המלך ואני דומה כשר לפני המלך. We have two different roles. He's like a slave in front of the king, and I'm like a minister in front of the king. What does that mean? What does that mean? It means that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa is like a person that's always around the king. What's a slave? A slave is very different than a minister. A minister comes in front of the king whenever he needs. Whenever the king needs to advise or he needs him to do something. It depends what kind of minister. If he's a minister that takes care of the military, for instance, whenever there's wars or potential wars or danger, this minister would come and you'll advise with him. But what's a slave? A slave is always there around you in all the regular daily routine moments, which means he sees you in every second. He's always there serving you. You have a much closer connection. Closer connection. But if you need to know anything about the military, or you need to know how to proceed with fighting a war, you're not going to ask a slave. The slave, you'll ask him to bring you coffee. But who would you? So it's a totally different role. So who's greater? Over here you see that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was a Tsadik. Definitely he's a Tsadik. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was a Talmid Chacham. And Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was able to connect with HaKadosh Baruch Hu much more. So over here there's different pshatim that I saw, which are very, very interesting. We'll say that and we'll end. The Etz Yosef, that's Mefaresh on the En Yaakov, says that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was not greater. He wasn't greater. Rather, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was bigger, and what he meant to say to his wife is that since somebody who's very great, HaKadosh Baruch Hu medakdek imayim kechut ha'se'ara, which means there's such a thing called iyun tefillah. Whenever you pray, if you pray very, very hard, not necessarily it's a good thing. Sometimes it's a bad thing, because in Shamayim, the Gemara says, Roshat Dvarim, three things, maskirim avonotav shel adam. The opening up the notebooks to see, let's see, you're praying so hard, you really seems to be like you think you deserve things. So let's open up and see if you do. And they see all kind of sins that you made. So Yochanan ben Zakkai said, I can't do what he's doing, because if I pray very hard, I'll be also maybe answered. But the opening, since I'm greater than him, and kol hagadol mechavero, a person that's greater has that dikduk more, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu medakdekim tzadikim kechut ha'se'ara. So whoever's greater, this notebook is more precise. Like, he's such a great person. He made such a thing over here. He spoke in a time that he shouldn't speak. That could be a very, very grave sin for such a great person, where for somebody who's not there is not so bad. So therefore, the answer that we're trying to say is that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was not greater than him at all. He wasn't greater than him at all. But rather, he didn't have, since he wasn't that greater, sometimes when he's not so great like the other, you have a leeway. Others say differently. For example, in Sefer Or Hashem, he says that Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa was Oved HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'atmada and beprishut, and therefore his tefillah, concerning the tefillah, he would have more connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu than Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, which was greater, but not when it comes to tefillah. There's different answers that the grass has a different answer, but I think that gives you a perspective. Sometimes a tzaddik could be greater for certain things, like for tefillah, if you need something, but not necessarily. The Tosfot says that a person that needs a Yeshua should go to a Rosh Yeshiva. Why? He has the power of Torah. So you need to know, we try to organize a little bit over here and say, there's two pshatim. One pshat is that rather you should go to a great Talmid Chacham. The greater is, he has more chance, but not necessarily want to do that because medakdekim im Talmid Chacham kechut ha'se'ara. And on the other hand, we're saying that as the Or Hashem brings down, that when we're dealing with tefillah could have maybe a different element than other things, and a tzaddik, a parush, could have the connection. Let's see some of the questions that came up. We learned a lot of things. Okay, Chavod, any questions?
What happens if you come across the type of person that's like that, right? Everyone's going, everyone's what's your reaction?
Amazing. You should also get excited, but just know that around the corner in the yeshiva there's Talmidei Chachamim, and you should be more excited for them and look up to them and want to be like them. Not necessarily maybe for a woman, but for your children. When you raise your boy, and you should be excited for every Jew. But it would be a nice thing. I wish I would do that more. I used to do that. When I would see a yeshiva baruch walk in, I would drive, let's say, my son to yeshiva. I would see a yeshiva baruch say, "Wow, look at that! Or the Rosh Yeshiva is walking. The Rosh Yeshiva, you know what? So that is where we. It's also nice if you mean it. Also, it's also nice if you mean it, because children know if you mean it or you don't know, or you don't mean it. But at least this is where we should be more excited. Let's put it this way. Yes, we gave it the explanation. We review it. Talmid Chacham, we said that Talmid Chacham, there's a lot of halachot of Talmidei Chachamim, how we should treat them. For example, the halacha says, before I define your Talmid Chacham, which we explained already, but I'll explain again. Talmid Chacham, the halacha says that nakit leshuka. It's halacha in Shulchan Aruch. It's Gemara in Baba Batra. Gemara in Shulchan Aruch, Rosh Mem Gimel. The Gemara says that whenever a Talmid Chacham comes with his merchandise, let's say, we said that a Talmid Chacham is allowed to work a little bit for his parnasah. He needs to live somehow. Not necessarily needs to collect money to live. So he brings his merchandise, and you have a lot of other people that come with their merchandise, and it's the day that the market is open. Let's say it's a flea market, or whatever it is. So halacha says that you prevent everybody else from selling until he sells everything that he has, which means that's halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Okay. There's certain halachot, for example, of what happens if a person says mevazet Talmid Chacham. He needs to pay a certain amount, litozav. There's many different halachot of how we need to treat the Talmid Chacham, what we're not allowed to say Talmid Chacham. A lot of halachot. But what is a Talmid Chacham? So we said again, and we'll repeat it. Talmid Chacham is somebody who's Torato umanuto, somebody who's learning majority of the day, which means that's his focus, learning. Even if he does other things, right? He's allowed to go to the doctor, he's allowed to take his wife to work, right? To drive his wife to work. But what really holds his day? So that's called Torato umanuto. And somebody who's in his knowledge knows in majority of the places in the Talmud, in the Poskim, in the Mefarshim, he knows how to open, he knows how to learn, he knows how to understand. Somebody like that is already amazing. If he also knows how to be posek halacha, which means another mistake that people make is that they go to ask halachot, for example, from any rabbi that has an appearance of a rabbi. What's an appearance of a rabbi? A very good appearance of a rabbi is if you have a beard and you have a stomach. That is, you know, that you're 100%. That you have already, that you have it all. But not necessarily you're a rabbi. And if you can say a nice thing on the Shabbat in the shul, you can say a nice Dvar Torah that you read in Lekach Tov or whatever it is, or one of the booklets that come out, that's beautiful. Then you definitely, so people go to ask him questions. That's not necessarily considered a rabbi. Today we call rabbi loosely to anybody. Anybody who's getting married, right, is a rabbi. I mean, it becomes a term of respect. If you have a son in yeshiva, so even the person that's doing the financial work at the office is rabbi. You call him Rabbi Goldstein, right? That's the way it is. Not necessarily as a rabbi. It's a term of respect. But what's really a rabbi? A rabbi, according to reality, according to halacha, is somebody who has smicha, which means he went through the courses which takes years and years. He excelled. He went through testing, and he was able to get a smicha, a certain teudot that he is in the level of a rabbi. Yeah. And who's a tzaddik? You wanted to know who's a tzaddik. So tzaddik, we mentioned over here. I mean, loosely again, you can call it tzaddik anybody, because today you say, "Hey, tzaddik." So what does it mean? It means nothing. It means another way of. But what's really a tzaddik, the way we try to explain over here is that, again, in the Sfarim, there's so many different things. I don't want to go, there's so many things in the Sfarim. No, I said in Hasidut, that maybe we should have a discussion a different time, because there's so much different understanding of different terminologies between Hasidut, Hasidim, and others. I just mentioned, since we talk about tzaddik, first of all, there's a Sefer Maor V'Shemesh. He says, how do you know who's a Talmid? How should I know who's a Talmid Chacham? People don't know. I mean, how should I know a Talmid Chacham? In other words, like this. If you have a tremendous doctor, somebody who's extremely high-level doctor, right? A professor, somebody very, very big. And if I talk to him, I wouldn't understand what he says. And then you have an average doctor. And I would talk to him, and I wouldn't also understand what he says, because I don't understand the language of doctors. To my understanding, could be the average doctor seems to be much more knowledgeable, because maybe I understand much better. Those that are much higher, I'm very disconnected from them. So could be the lower doctor, to me, as since I'm ignorant, I wouldn't realize who's really bigger than who. They're both talking Chinese to me. Same thing with Torah. In other words, there's two things over here that I want to say. One thing is that when we're talking about Gdol Hador, I don't have the tools to know who's Gdol Hador and who's not, because it's when it comes to certain levels, it's Chinese to me. They're not talking a nice vort on the parsha. They hold, right, nice vort on the parsha, every bar mitzvah boy can do. They're holding places that I'm not there. It's like, how would I know who's a big mekubal and who's not a big mekubal? I have no clue. So the Sefer Maor V'Shemesh says, the way you'll know is you go to the Talmidei Chachamim, the rabbis. They'll tell you who's big. If they're excited, if the rabbis are excited from Rav Chaim Kanievsky, he must be great. Would I know that Rav Chaim Kanievsky is great? I don't have the tools. I don't know. To me, he sounds exactly like others that are much lower than him. But if the great Gdolei Hador, great rabbis, saying, right, those that I can relate to, saying that he is much higher, that gives me a certain. So that's one thing. Another thing that I want to mention, it's very important, is that many people tend to not respect rabbis because they think, since Torah is something that everybody learns, so they think that they're also in the level somehow. So the rabbi said like this, no, it's like that. I would say like that. It's not like, again, we're talking about medicine. I have no clue about medicine. So if a doctor said something, if I'll ask him what he means and he try to explain to me in medical terms, I have no clue what he's talking. It's Chinese to me. So I can a little bit understand what he says. I can grasp a little bit. But not fully. So I'll respect what he says because he's on a high level that I understand that it's better to listen to him. But when it comes to a rabbi and he says something, I think that I'm in the parsha, I can also relate to it because I also learned a little bit. So that is something that is wrong. It's wrong because those rabbis are much, much higher levels than we are. Questions? Yes, random question. Let's talk a little bit about Hanukkah. How's Hanukkah? Yes. Thank you.